Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to discuss with you guys one of the things that's very heavily misunderstood out there, and it's something that one of my clients brought up, and he's like, hey, maybe you could discuss this in a video once I explained to him what was going on. And that is this idea that people can use 1-rep max calculators to calculate their 1-rep max. Now, the funny thing is that these actual calculators are very accurate. So people say, well, what do you mean? How are they accurate? Well, it's because people use them incorrectly. Guys will do a 6-rep max, and they will look at the percentages on here and assume that they can extrapolate that and determine what their 1-rep max is. Okay? That's not how these charts work. These charts are intended for athletes to take their 1-rep max and determine how many reps they can do with a percentage of their max. And I know that's going to sound bizarre to a lot of people, but you have to understand, these charts and calculators were created from the strength and conditioning world. Historically, in the weight room, don't most athletes who lift weights max out? Like, is that normal? You go to a college or a high school football room or baseball or any other sport. Guys are in there maxing out all the time. Guys are in there maxing out all the time. All of our strength standards. Now you go to the same websites that I found this. You type in 1-rep max calculators and you start finding that there's strength standards for a bunch of lifts. The squat, the deadlift, the clean, the snatch, all these things, right? There's all these strength standards. They're all in 1-rep maxes. Let's sink in for a moment. All right, people are approaching this who are coming from the bodybuilding world, and they're under some assumption that they can just use this to calculate maxes because it's dangerous to max out. Maxing out is perfectly safe if it's done correctly. Maxing out's very safe if done correctly. I mean, all things relative. Yeah, you could get hurt, but you could also get hurt driving to the gym. You could get hurt walking down the stairs in the morning to go to the gym, like when you first wake up in the morning. I mean, the safest thing you could do would be just never leave your bed, right? That would be the safest thing you could do. Maxing out isn't particularly dangerous in the right environment. It's actually a fairly safe way to train. It's normal in the sports world. It's normal in the strength world. People know what their maxes are. They already know what their maxes are because they test them all the time. You test them with all the boys on the team. Most football players and other high school and college athletes know what they can bench and what they can squat. Well, at least their proxy of a squat. They know what they can lift for a max. They do it with each other. It's normal. All right, these calculators are used to determine your rep work. It's for you to be able to look at it and say, hey, if I want to do some 10-rep sets for a phase, right? Because I want to do some sort of periodization. I already know my maxes. I need to set up some sort of a periodization or something. Or I need to set this up for an athlete, right? If you're a strength coach, especially a fairly new strength coach, these charts are useful to take your athletes because you just say, oh, I want to put my guy on some linear periodization, who already has maxed out and practiced maxing out. Okay, you can use this to determine about what percentage they need to do with their maxes for their 10-rep sets, for their 8-rep blocks, all this stuff. And because these are athletes who have a history of maxing out, let's say you do run them on some periodization. These are people who already practiced maxes in the past, and you don't have them max for a little while. You can use these rep works to determine approximately what their max is going to be as you start peaking them up at the end of a periodization block to see how much they've improved. Let's say you're going to run a 12-week linear periodization. They're only going to max at the end. They're going to go 12 weeks without hitting a max. In that case, possibly, unless they just do it with the boys anyways, and they very well might, by the way, against your wishes as a strength coach. There's a reality of dealing with athletes, guys. They don't always do what you tell them to do. Tell you that as a coach right now. I get people come in and hit extra singles outside of their normal training. Hey coach, I wanted to see if I could box squat this amount of weight on their off day. I wanted to see if I could bench this weight on my off day. All right, I deal with this as a coach. You gotta learn to deal with that. But the point is, it helps you estimate where their maxes are going to be at the end of a training cycle. But these are people who are already maxed out. People who don't practice maxes ever, these charts will not be accurate at all. They're accurate for people who max out often enough, because they practice it. Hitting a max is a skill. You have to learn how to lift a maximum weight. But athletes tend to max out multiple times per year at certain phases, or they max out all the time. It's normal. And it's a valid test of strength. If you really need to test where your guy's strength is, you test their maxes. So they're going to get them throughout the year at different points. So they have practice. They have practice lifting heavy. If you only train in the 5 to 10 rep range and you never max out, when you come to max out for the first time, this chart is going to be off. And that's what my clients and other people found who've done that sort of training, and I start them on some linear stuff. They get over and say, coach, I thought my max was going to be, 300 pounds, and 275 was a grinder, and 285 I couldn't lift it at all. Like, yeah, because you've done nothing but 5s to 10s. But if you consistently hit those, so if you start using this chart and your 5 and your 10 rep max say, hey, I should be able to lift 300 pounds, max out for several weeks. That means that's what your strength potential is if you actually practice maxing. Right? That tells you your strength potential. But it only applies if you actually max out regularly, not your first time maxing if you haven't done a max in a year or 2 years. Of course it's going to be below that because you don't have the skill of maxing out. So it's not going to work. But if you spent 3 or 4 weeks maxing out, all of a sudden it's going to be accurate. You're going to find that with your 5s and 10s will carry over once you've spent several weeks practicing maxes. Does that mean that you got stronger? Did you gain a bunch of hypertrophy in that 3 or 4 weeks? No. No. If your 10 reps and 5 rep maxes still stayed the same on top of it, did you really get stronger? No. You just learned to display it better. What else does this do? These charts tell us that your maxes went up. Someone who maxes out regularly, let's say that you max out, you run some sort of 5-3-1, and you max out every single week. You max out every single week. Every 3 weeks then. Every 3-week block you hit a max. You could use these charts to see where your rep maxes are throughout the different weeks of training to calculate it. In other words, if your 5 rep max was 300 pounds, and then all of a sudden, through a training cycle, you do an AMRAP with your normal 5 rep max and you get 6 reps, or a 7th rep, a 7th sloppy rep, this chart would then tell you on that next wave coming up, hey, my max is probably going to be this based upon that percentage instead of this. My max may have gone up as much as 6%, right, or whatever the chart says. It's useful for that. Because that can be valuable, because people who don't max every week, let's say you max every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks in your training system, but you see a nice big change in your rep maxes when you do an AMRAP somewhere. So a perfect example, your previous 5 rep max, all of a sudden you rep it for 7 on a good day. Now that chart will probably carry over. When you go to hit that max again coming up a week later, because that's where it's at in your training system, then yes, it will probably have gone up appropriately based upon the chart. But this only applies to people who actually max, and it generally works the other direction. People who don't max out, these charts are completely useless for that. They're not valuable to you. They're not helpful. They're not intended for you. They're not intended for you. And that's okay, but understand how to use these tools correctly. and understand that they come from the strength and conditioning world, not the bodybuilding world. And that's why they don't seem accurate to people who are coming at it from the other direction. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.